Hello young people and those who are young at heart. Change. We see it around us every single day. Something transforming from one thing into another. Summer fading into autumn. Friends or loved ones growing up or growing older. Time slowly or quickly in some cases marching on from one day to the next. Change is inevitable. It comes to everyone, like it or not. Whether the change is big or small, or whether it comes from the inside or the outside, it affects everybody. How we deal with change is up to us. One of the biggest changes that I've gone through in my life was the decision to follow Jesus and become a Christian. It changed my life in so many ways. It affected most of my big decisions as well. It helped me choose my career path and which university I wanted to go to. It helped me choose the kind of guys I wanted to date. I landed a pretty fabulous husband out of that one, and son. It helped me choose how I spend my free time and what I focus my energies on. The decision and the change to follow Jesus has transformed my entire life. And to be honest, I don't actually know what my life would look like if I wasn't a Christian. But I'm just grateful every day that Jesus has changed my life for the better. Let me tell you about a young man whose life was changed by Jesus, in the best way possible. His name was Saul. Saul was a young Pharisee who was coming up around the time that Jesus' followers were beginning to tell the stories of what they had seen. Saul, like many of the other Pharisees, did not believe that Jesus was the Son of God. The Pharisees were still very threatened by Jesus and his popularity and the fact that the word of his teachings were spreading. Saul saw the impact that the followers of Jesus were having and how Christianity was beginning to spread around the region. The Pharisees attempted to stop it, but Saul made it his mission to destroy the emerging church and stop it in its tracks. About 135 miles north of Jerusalem sat the city of Damascus. Damascus was a strategic city for the Christians to go to. It sat on a crossroads of the main trade routes for the whole region. Saul knew if Christianity took hold in Damascus, it would spread everywhere like wildfire. Saul went to the high priest. He asked for permission to go to Damascus, search for the Christians, arrest them, and bring them back to Jerusalem in chains. I'm going to read the rest of the story from the Bible. In Acts chapter 9, verses 3 to 22, it says this: He set off, and when he got to the outskirts of Damascus, he was suddenly dazed by a blinding flash of light. As he fell to the ground, he heard a voice, "Saul, Saul, why are you out to get me?" He said, "Who are you, Master?" "I am Jesus, the one you're hunting down. I want you to get up and enter the city. In the city, you'll be told what to do next." His companions stood there, dumbstruck. They could hear the sound but couldn't see anyone, while Saul, picking himself up from the ground, found himself to be stone blind. They had to take him by the hand and lead him into the city. He continued blind for 3 days. He ate nothing. He drank nothing. There was a disciple in the city of Damascus by the name of Ananias. The master spoke to him in a vision. He said, "Ananias." "Yes, master." "Get up and go over to Straight Avenue. Ask at the house of Judas for a man from Tarsus. His name is Saul. He's there praying. He has just had a dream in which he saw a man named Ananias enter the house, lay hands on him, and he could see again." Ananias protested, "Master, you can't be serious. Everyone's talking about this man and the terrible things he's doing in the region. His reign of terror against your people in Jerusalem, and now he's shown up here with papers from the chief priest to give him license to do the same to us." But the master said, "Don't argue, go. I have picked him as my personal representative to the non-Jews, the kings, and the Jews. And now I'm about to show him what he's in for, the hard suffering that goes with the job." So Ananias went and found the house. He placed his hands on blind Saul and said, "Brother Saul, the master sent me, the same Jesus you saw on your way here. He sent me so you could see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit." No sooner were the words out of his mouth than something like scales fell from Saul's eyes. He could see again. He got to his feet, was baptised, and sat down to a hearty meal. Saul spent a few days getting acquainted with the Damascus disciples, but then he went right to work, wasting no time, preaching in the meeting places that Jesus was the Son of God. Many were caught off guard by this and not sure they could trust him. They kept saying, "Isn't this the man who wreaked havoc in Jerusalem among the believers? And didn't he come here to do the same thing, to arrest us and drag us off to jail?" But their suspicions didn't slow Saul down for even a minute. His momentum was up, and he ploughed straight into the opposition, disarming the Damascus Jews and trying to show them that Jesus was the Messiah. Many of the traditional Jews were outraged at this change in Saul. There were plots against his life, and he had to flee back to Jerusalem. But when he got there, the disciples were distrusting, to say the least. It took some convincing, but eventually the disciples did accept Saul. They had seen the transformation in his life for themselves, and they believed that Jesus was the cause. Saul eventually changed his name to Paul as an outward sign of the inward transformation that he had been through. It can be difficult to make big changes in our lives, but with God's help, it is completely possible. Paul then went on to travel all over the region, teaching people about Jesus, starting churches and supporting other Christians. He wrote many letters to different groups of Christians, and many of these are recorded in the Bible and make up a huge chunk of the New Testament. Paul's new life with Christ wasn't an easy one though. He was beaten, he was stoned, he was thrown in prison, he was shipwrecked, he went without sleep or food, he lost everything he owned. But despite all of that, he continued to spread the good news of Jesus without fail. He could replace all of his belongings, the cuts and the bruises would heal, he could wait out his time in prison and continue to write letters to the churches. He knew the amazing, life-changing transformation that he'd found in Jesus, and he wanted as many people to know the same.